Well, welcome to the the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Cultural Safety presentation. My name is Ileana and I'm the trainer and assessor for this unit for both the diploma courses. So what we'll be covering today is the cultural safety and potential issues, the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, communication techniques and work practices, what are cultural brokers, devising and documenting ways to support service delivery and increase community participation, self-determination, and evaluating our strategies and practices. So with the presentation, I've tried to take the same path as in the assessment, and I've tried to sort of answer the assessment questions within the PowerPoint presentation as well, and I've included extra resources that are really useful throughout the assessment for you as well. So, cultural safety, what is that? The term cultural safety tends to refer to an environment that is safe and empowering to individuals of various cultures. It's generally a feeling of being safe and accepted for who you are regardless of your cultural background and upbringing. Lack of cultural safety can have a range of impacts and consequences. The link on that PowerPoint is a really, really great paper in regards to cultural safety in relation to the Indigenous communities. It talks about some of the consequences and impacts of a non-cultural safe environment as well. So a part of offering a culturally safe environment is critically evaluating and reflecting upon our own practices, personal bias, as well as our preconceived stereotypes. For example, if I have the belief that all families consist of a mum, dad and children, I may not pay attention to the information that a grandparent, uncle or local elder provides me in regards to the needs of the child. This doesn't create a culturally safe environment for the child or the family. It creates a cultural safety issue due to my own personal bias as well as my lack of knowledge and awareness of kinship. Please feel free to ask questions at any stage, Melanie.
Thank you.
So how that applies to the assessment. So we need to consider what may cause potential cultural safety issues. So think about things like the Indigenous history and the dealings with governments and facilities. Consider the emotions still being experienced as a result of the stolen generation. Also consider the connection that Indigenous communities have with the land and how the loss of this has impacted them. And think about how we can improve our practices. For example, can we employ more Indigenous educators to help families feel more at ease within our service? Rather than taking a child away from the parent in the mornings, we can stand there and have a chat with the family and ask them if they'd like us to take the child for them and get them settled, or would they like to come and join an activity with the child and slowly ease into that separation. Can we be flexible in our routine and empower families to stay and play for a little bit so that both the family and child feel settled and ease? And it also helps us build that little bit of a relationship and rapport as well. Can we include an acknowledgement of the land within our service delivery? Are our displays inclusive? Do they depict all cultures and skin tones? So when we're thinking about the assessment and cultural safety, it's about taking that holistic approach and viewing it as if we're coming into the centre for the first time, and think about how we would feel coming into a new environment. Would we feel overwhelmed, or is the environment that we're providing enough of little bits and pieces to make us feel comfortable? So the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People plays a key role in some of the questions within the assessment, and it's one of several applicable legislations that relate to the Indigenous people's rights and the early childhood setting. So when we talk about the UN Declaration on the Rights of the People, we're talking about the draft declaration. From memory, I think it's Article 33. These two links here take you straight to the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, and it's really handy to sort of try and get a brief understanding of what's involved in it.
These websites, can we actually access them after your talk?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I'm more than happy to send this through to you as well if you want a copy.
Yeah, that'll be great. Yeah,
no
thank
problem.
you.
That's right. What I'll do, Melanie, is I'll just get you to message me your email address and then I can send it straight to you so you've got it.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, that'll be great.
No worries. So the UN Declaration also guides our practices as early childhood professionals in that we encourage families as well as all of our Indigenous families as well as all of our families to engage in shared decision making through their participation in parental management committees. They can choose their representative within the service. So for example, they might opt to elect an elder or a community member to join the management committee, or delegate someone that consults with us and that we can consult and seek guidance from. For example, when we're reviewing our policies, a lot of us as professionals forget to seek external consultation when we're reviewing our policies. And if we have a delegated person within the Indigenous community that we can go to and seek guidance from, it comes in really, really handy. It also promotes us to invite local community members and local elders to engage in culturally relevant practices within the service. So we might be able to invite an elder or a person from the community to come into the centre and undertake an activity or an experience with the children. So things like I've had in my centres in the past, we've had local elders come and do a yarning circle with the children. We've had them come and dig a hole in the backyard and do a traditional damper cooked in the ground. We've had others that come in and do traditional Dreamtime stories with the children. So it's just giving children an exposure to the Indigenous cultures within our community, and it's also empowering the Indigenous community to feel as if they have a say and are a part of our service as well.
Sure.
That just talks about what the article covers. We then look at the difference between a communication technique and a work practice. So communication technique considers the strategies, methods and techniques that we might use to ensure that our verbal and non-verbal communication is culturally relevant and takes into account protocols and cultural taboos. It's generally easily understood and a two-way process, whereas a work practice is a process or specific resource that we use to assist us in achieving a specific goal. It can generally consist of a specific or a set of strategies and can be flexible and creative in its application. So an example of some work practices are things like engaging an interpreter, where we can get assistance with clear and transparent communication, as well as being able to identify the needs and expectations of the second party. We're able to engage services of a translator so that we're able to translate key documents in a local dialect or local languages so that everyone is given the same information in documented form as well. We're also able to engage services of a cultural broker that can assist us in ensuring that cultural and local protocols and actions are being met, and it also gives ourselves and our team an awareness as to what the local protocols are. The next slide is about communication techniques, and in relation to this assessment, we generally talk about the 8 ways of Aboriginal learning. They're the key ones that we tend to focus on. So in regards to storytelling, it's where a lot of us tend to relate and connect through the sharing of personal stories and experiences. So for example, rather than having a parent come to me and say, oh, I'm really, really struggling, and for me to just ignore them, I can use words sort of, I can appreciate how difficult it is to go to the doctor when you have little ones. I remember how difficult it was when my little ones were ill and I needed to catch the transport. So it's just relating it back to yourself so that you've got that empathy with the other person as well. Your learning maps provide the recipient with a range of visual images as well as the oral commentary, so it can help to view and understand the pathway. A really good example of this being implemented into practice is the BBB diagram on page 10 of the ELF document. This lets us visually see the connection between the BBB concepts and the ELF principles. So
okay.
Non-verbal, it relates to body language that we're using or portraying. It can also relate to hands-on experiences. So for example, feelings of annoyance may be reflected by our body language and they're likely to be noticed by the second party. You also need to be aware that some non-verbal communication cues such as hand gestures, facial expressions used by the Indigenous community and individuals may have different meanings than in Western contexts and vice versa. Also be mindful that your own non-verbal communication is observed and it may be interpreted slightly differently than what you intended. So it's basically being aware of not only of our language but also our body language and how that may be interpreted. In regard to symbols and images, many Indigenous individuals and communities use symbols, images, artwork and metaphors as means to share information and knowledge. So a symbol or an image can be as powerful as a word. A great example is the diagram on this PowerPoint where it's got the words and the images. If we were to remove the wording, most Indigenous communities would be able to still understand that. Whereas for us, if we take away the wording and just leave the symbols, it may become a little bit more complex. In regard to land links, Indigenous people have a strong link and connection to the land, and we can use this connection to help us with our communication. So an example of this is that we can demonstrate our respect to the land that our service is on and respect to the local community. And that might help us establish a trusting relationship that opens communication channels. Non-linear is about thinking outside the square. For example, think about what other ways we can use to inform families about upcoming events. Do we need to use flyers or can we create a story about our excursion? So rather than just putting out permission forms or putting up a flyer in regards to an upcoming excursion, we can sort of be a little bit more creative and almost along the lines of a learning story. The children have shown great interest in flying aeroplanes. As a group, we've decided to visit the local airport. We would love to have parent volunteers and things like that, so that it's still portraying the same message, but just in a slightly more non-linear manner. Deconstruct and reconstruct is about being aware that some individuals may prefer to watch and then engage with you. This generally enables the individual to process information about what's happening, how it's happening and why it's happening, and it helps their own comfort before they engage on the hands-on experiences. Community links is about engaging with the community rather than just individuals. A lot of Indigenous individuals generally work for the betterment of the community. So for example, rather than offering free health checks to just the children in your care, you can extend that invitation to include family and community members. Again, it would depend on the relationship and partnership that you have with the local health facility that's offering that service. Cultural brokers. So according to James Cook University, a cultural broker is defined as a person who facilitates the border crossing of another person or group of people from one culture to another. A cultural broker can play a crucial role at the start of the research process, bridging the cultural divide to facilitate a smooth introduction and interaction between the researcher and the Aboriginal and/or Torres StraitIslander community. Jaworski defines the role of a cultural broker as the act of bridging, linking or mediating between groups of or persons of different cultural backgrounds for the purpose of reducing conflict or producing change. A cultural broker can play a key role in providing knowledge, skills and awareness of the needs, expectations and protocols of and to both parties. So the cultural broker can be used to facilitate a smooth introduction and interaction between the early childhood services, educators and the Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander community and the family. You can also engage the services of a cultural broker to assist with interviews and the enrolment process, as well as building a trust-based relationship with Indigenous families and relevant community personnel. So an example could be that the cultural broker might be able to introduce you to the local elders and help you in arranging a consultation process with them. This again comes in really handy when you're looking at changing some of your service delivery aspects or reviewing your policies. So one of the centres that I was at, we were arming and ahhing about offering a pick-up and drop-off service, and we weren't sure if it was going to be popular or not. So we used a cultural broker and went out into the Indigenous communities just to see if that would be of use to them. And we ended up offering the pick-up and drop-off service, but when we weren't using the bus, we had the driver go around to the Indigenous communities and take them to the shops and things like that. So it became, rather than being just focused on the service and service delivery, it got extended to become a community focus.
Are they available through the council, or how do you get in contact with cultural brokers?
Normally you can go through the council. You can also contact your local interpreting and translating organisations. In South Australia we can get them through Navita as well. So your special needs organisations that focus on early childhood as well generally have them available. So then we look at devising and documenting ways to support service delivery and increase communication participation. So how can we document service delivery? Service delivery, again, needs to be viewed holistically. It needs to take into account aspects such as policies and procedures, children's observations, curriculum being provided, enrolment and orientation processes, menus that are offered, cultural and community-based events and things like that. These aspects are generally documented in a range of ways and involve specific processes. For example, we undertake observations and learning stories on the children to identify their needs, strengths, likes, dislikes, and we then use this information to develop our stimulating developmentally appropriate curriculum. How do we ensure that our service is culturally safe, relevant and meets the needs of family, children and local community? So again, we use a range of strategies to review and evaluate our current processes and practices, policies, procedures, menus and things like that. When we review them, we need to engage in critical reflection. So we can ask ourselves things like, are our current policies inclusive of everyone? Do they still meet the needs of our families and clients? Have we consulted relevant community individuals to ensure that community needs are being met as well? Have we provided an opportunity for all of our stakeholders to provide us with feedback, thoughts, suggestion, express their needs? How do we encourage family and community participation throughout our service delivery? So we can encourage this by using strategies such as seeking members to join the parent committee, sending out invitations for family participation in specific or general experiences, holding events that are of interest and relevance to families and community. For example, things like your open days or fake days with your free sausage sizzle are normally quite a good hit. Using a range of questioning techniques and strategies is another way of gaining feedback. So we can send out surveys, we can have feedback forms available at reception and in the rooms, we can hold competitions and things like that. So again, it comes back to that non-linear thing of trying to think outside of the square and trying to identify ways that our clients and relevant stakeholders and community members might find an enjoyable way of providing us with information and feedback.
Sure.
So if we then talk about self-determination, the Free Dictionary defines self-determination as the power or ability to make a decision for oneself without influence from outside. All individuals, regardless of culture, socio-economic status, have the right to feel empowered to determine and contribute to their own fatal course. It also takes into account Article 1 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which states that self-determination is the right of all people to determine their political status and freely pursue their economic, social and cultural development. So how can we increase and support self-determination within our families? We're really lucky in that as early childhood professionals, we're in a really unique position and we can support and increase self-determination through a vast range of strategies and service delivery aspects. So when we're considering our service delivery, we can extend opportunities for families and community members to join the parent management committee and participate in making decisions that may affect them and their community. We can provide them with opportunities to express their thoughts, feelings, frustrations and ideas with an educator that they feel comfortable with. We can involve them in the review of policies and procedures and other aspects of service delivery to ensure that their needs and cultures are being considered in an appropriate manner rather than us assuming that we know what we're doing. We can offer information nights and relevant training to them. So for example, at one service we had a child psychologist come in to our parent information night and hold a 15 to 20 minute workshop where they talked about behaviour guidance strategies with the parents. In another centre, we noticed that we had some issues in regards to oral health. So we organised for a dentist to come during the day and have a hands-on experience with the children where they got the free little toothbrushes and toothpaste and things like that. And then on the same night, had the same dentist come to our parent information night and go through oral health strategies and techniques with the parents and give them information where they are able to access free dental services and things like that. We can also partner with local health facilities to offer opportunities for families to have their health needs met in a familiar environment. So at one service, we had a baby nurse come out to the centre and parents were able to come in throughout the day and have a chat with her, get the baby down things like that. So it was within a familiar environment, so it takes away that fear of institutions and government requirements and things like that. We can also consult with individuals, communities and elders to identify if there's any specific needs that we might be able to help them. So it's going back to that example that I gave you before about the minibus that we used for our drop-off and pick-up, and then we extended the invitation to the community to use as they needed. So it's things like that.
Yep.
So when we're evaluating our strategies and practices, it's about determining and implementing our goals. So especially in relation to cultural safety, we need some way of identifying whether these are working or not. A great way of achieving this is in a manner that will not overwhelm us is to look at each goal and identify how it would be measured. After identifying the measurable outcomes, we then look at whether or not these measurements have been reached. So an example is my goal was to increase participation from our Indigenous families in the local Indigenous community. I can measure the success or failure of this goal by identifying whether or not I've had an increase in Indigenous members joining our parent committee, whether I've had an increase of suggestions, feedback and other documented or verbal input from Indigenous members, identifying if more families members have attended the service and engaged in activities with children. These are just some small ways that I can work out whether or not it's been a success. This will also indicate the success or failure of my current strategies in relation to my ultimate goal. I may then decide to evaluate my strategies to determine why they have or have not been a success. I can undertake this by involving our families and community. I may need to use the services of a translator, interpreter or cultural broker to ensure that communication is clear, effective and transparent. I may also consult with local elders to identify another range of culturally relevant strategies that I could try to see if I can gain a better or different result. So basically with our outcomes, we identify what our goal wants to be, we identify strategies, we put them into place, give it a trial period, and then at the end of the trial period, we need to work out whether or not our strategies have been a success. If they haven't been a success, then we need to go back to square one and identify why our strategies may not have worked and are there other different strategies that we can try while still achieving the same goal.
I'm sorry, are my children too loud in the background? Can you hear them?
No, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
It's not a problem. As long as you can hear me, no, that's not a problem.
I can.
No, it's all good. So it's important that within all of our dealings with Indigenous people that we remember the hardships that they have experienced. We need to be aware that even if they themselves have not experienced these hardships firsthand, it's passed down through each generation and the ramifications are still being felt. I've also included some other useful resources. Like I personally found these great with this assessment. And again, it relates back to some of those questions within the assessment.
Yep.
So did you have any questions that I can answer for you or try and help you with?
I was just wondering, do I actually have to find a cultural broker? I was reading one of the questions. No.
Okay. You don't have to. No. The questions are just asking how you would use them, when you would use them. That's all it's really asking. It's just checking your knowledge as to whether or not you know what the role of the cultural broker is.
Okay, yeah. No, that was the only question I actually had. So
okay.
Other than that, you've really helped heaps. So I really
fantastic.
Thanks for that.
My pleasure, my pleasure. And I'll email you the PowerPoints and with the links and the resources and everything like that, if you like.
Yeah, that'll be great. Do you want me to
Well, thank you for attending today's training. And if you do have any other questions, please feel free to message me or contact me via OpenSpace and I'll do everything I can to help you.